Today we're going to talk about gathering requirements, and this is such an important topic. And we really want to do here is really understand the client's goals, the customer's goals when they bring things to us. Now, this is an important topic. Why? Because a lot of the time that we spend in our positions and our roles, we're creating solutions for other people. Rarely are we creating a solution just for ourselves. So it's important that we have tips and tricks and tools so that when we're talking to people that we can get the best requirements out of them as possible. I love this quote: "A problem well stated is half solved." And that's so true when it comes to gathering requirements. We often say at Triumph that we use the analogy of upstream and downstream. If we can get problem solved upstream at the beginning of a process, it's so much easier than letting it go downstream and try to solve it further down the path. We always say that things as they go through a project, they never get simpler or easier as it goes downstream. It only gets more complex. So we really want to solve these problems upstream before it gets too far. Now, I believe when it comes to gathering requirements, the biggest thing we have to consider is ego. If our ego is too high, we won't listen to the customer, and we might devalue the solution that they might be bringing. And that, in often cases, their solution might be the best option. Now, listen to what I said there. I said solution, and that's kind of a weird thing to think, that why is the customer bringing us a solution? But that's typically what happens. Most people don't bring us a detailed requirements document thinking through only the requirements or the inputs into what they're trying to solve. The human brain usually brings us solutions, and oftentimes the client or customer solution may not be the best one, but in many cases it is. And if our ego is too high, we'll devalue that and we won't listen to that. Oftentimes, the solution that they provide us is the best requirements document. Even if it's not the right solution, it's still the best requirements document. And if we dismiss it or devalue it, we lose the opportunity. Even if we know it's not quite right, we lose the opportunity to understand those requirements through the lens of their solution. Another problem that can go with ego is that maybe our ego is too low, and in which case we won't challenge the customer's flawed initial concept. So sometimes we might hear what they're saying, and we might just go, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's you want a workflow, or you want that Lava. Okay, we'll just do that." And oftentimes they don't have the technical expertise or all of the options that are available in their heads. And so by listening with a low ego and not challenging them, often, again, we don't get the best solution. So this is a really tight balance of making sure that your ego isn't too high and that you're not listening or devaluing their solution, but you also don't want it too low, in which case you're not, again, trying to find the best solution. You're just going with whatever they proposed. Now, when we talk about requirements, we really need to be listening. And this is a hard thing. Like, this is something that we're usually not, most of us are not great listeners. And we have to understand here too that it's important that we take our time. A lot of times we just want to push through this process. And again, this is an upstream downstream issue. We want to try to solve and get the understanding upstream. If we have to go back and get that understanding downstream, it usually means we wasted a lot of time and we have to do a lot of rework. And I know this listening is hard. I mean, I've been there in many, many cases. One of my actual favorite projects, and it was actually one of our biggest projects, took a lot of listening in the requirements phase. There was just a lot of detailed requirements. And I remember being in those meetings. It was 2 days worth of meetings. It was out of town. And I remember going through those requirements, and there are times during that day I'm not kidding, I literally wanted to get up, go to the restroom, and actually just go out to my car and drive to the airport and go home. And that wasn't a reflection of the client, by the way. They were incredible to work with. They knew the requirements. They were the nicest people. It was just so overwhelming, the amount of understanding that was required. I just wanted to give up. And I know for a fact when you're in those meetings, sometimes you're like, okay, I think I kind of get what you're saying, and we'll in your mind you're saying we'll finish out the requirements later. We can get to when we come back to the solution part later. We'll figure out what exactly that meant. And I would just tell you, when you feel that in your head, and that's very natural, resist. You are never closer to the right answer than you are in that moment. and have to backtrack and re-bring up context to get back to where you were is a really a big waste of time, and you're going to be refactoring and reworking. So as you go through that and your brain is like about to explode and you just want to give up, just call for a break. Try to go back and say, you know what, can you walk me through that again? Let's start from the top. I just really want to understand this. Oftentimes, too, when we're going into these requirements meetings, it's good to start and do what we call calling the foul and just say, hey, we're going to be asking a lot of questions. We're going to be seeking clarity in a lot of things. And sometimes that can be a little painful because you already know it, but we need to get up to speed on that. And the only way we know how to be successful is to really listen well and ask a lot of clarifying questions. And that might feel stressful even on your side, but this is the only way we know how to get it right. We want to solve this upstream so we don't have problems downstream. So listening, just remember, take your time. It's probably going to be painful on larger projects. That's okay. That's natural. But don't just skip it or move on too quickly. I love this concept, or this saying that in boxing, the outcome of the fight is determined in the gym, not the ring. Again, this is really speaking to upstream, downstream type of concepts here. No one really most boxers probably don't enjoy the gym and all that workout. They want to just get in the ring and do that part. But you can't be successful in the ring if you're not first successful in the gym. Same thing with requirements. A project cannot be successful in itself without good requirements and without good scoping and discovery in the beginning. So just don't underestimate the importance of this process. Now, one of the techniques that we like to use is called the 5 whys. This isn't unique to us. It's a very popular construct in requirements gathering or in engineering teams. It's one of the tools that is often used in Six Sigma to increase quality by making sure that we fully understand what's going on and what are the root causes to something. So again, it's an interviewing technique which helps determine the root need or issue that we're trying to solve. And so the best way I can explain this is to use a real-world example. And so this is a very common real-world example that you'll find when people explain the 5 whys. So the Jefferson Memorial, Washington, D.C., the stone exterior was starting to deteriorate. And so a small team was formed to try to figure out, well, what's going on and how do we solve this issue. So why? It was determined that it was because maintenance workers were power washing the monument every 2 weeks. And so, well, there you go. We've solved it. That's why this is happening. But they pushed forward and said, well, why are they power washing every 2 weeks? That seems a bit excessive. Well, there's quite a bit of bird droppings. Okay, well, why are there bird droppings? Because there's a large number of spiders. Why is there a large number of spiders? The spiders were attracted to the insects at night. Okay, what's with these insects? Well, the why there was the insects were attracted to the lights left on all night. And so really the root cause was because lights were being, the root solution would be turning the lights off earlier, reduced the number of insects, which reduced the number of spiders, birds, and the needs to power wash. So we found the root cause was really the lights being left on. It wasn't the power washing. Now the 5 whys is not a literal 5 whys. Oftentimes 5 turns out to be the right number, but you don't want to hold tight to it. It might be that you got to the root cause after 3 whys, and asking the 4th why is just not helpful. In fact, it might be rather controversial or not fun to be asked that. And sometimes it might take more than 5. But the thing you want to do is keep asking why. And oftentimes what I'll do is I'll say, hey, I'm going to ask why a few times. I'm not trying to judge why or why you even want this. I just need to understand the root cause. And so I'm not challenging your assumption that you need this. I just want to make sure I get down to the root cause. So again, calling the foul on that will help you communicate better. The other one, this is actually one of my favorites because I do believe this is the biggest trap that we fall into, is that the solution that your customer asks for may point you in the wrong direction from the very beginning. So you don't want to be hypnotized by the customer as they're explaining to you the solution that they bring. Because again, they often don't bring you requirements document, they bring you proposed solutions, and it's important to listen to them, and you want to listen to them so you get the requirements, but resist the temptation to get hypnotized by their solution. So oftentimes in my mind, I'll just keep listening to it, and I'll in my head going, okay, don't get tied to the solution, just listen to the requirements. And then when we're done, I'll put their solution away and try to validate it cleanly to say, is this the right solution? And is there another one that perhaps we should look at? But I've seen this so many times in myself and definitely in others too, where they just get trapped in someone saying, hey, I need a workflow to do this. And now all of a sudden, through the rest of the whole discovery, it's a workflow. And maybe a workflow is not the best option in that case. I love this quote by Henry Ford. He said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, and instead of creating the car, because people couldn't picture the car. It took an innovative and visionary set of people to create cars. And if he had listened to them, we would just have faster horses. Now, I love this quote, but it is a dangerous quote, okay? So let's look at two facets of this. True. Customers often don't know what they truly want because they don't know what's possible. And that's exactly what Henry Ford was saying. They don't know what's possible, so therefore all they want is a little better of what they have today. And so you have to understand that. And that's going back to not being hypnotized by their ideas. But at the same time, what's also true is that customers understand their needs better than anyone. They just need help translating that into a solution. So oftentimes their solutions will be right, and that's a good thing. That's a great thing. But don't get hypnotized into thinking that it is the only solution that happens. There's a real psychological battle you have to put on yourself because you will get hypnotized. I've been guilty of that, and I've seen it in many other cases. So another thing I would encourage you to do is you kind of have to play the devil's advocate. You kind of have to be contrarian in your solutions. It's so easy to go, well, obviously this should be a workflow, or obviously this should be, solution X. And that's very well be that that's true. But I would also always struggle to say, okay, well, what if it's not that? What else could it be? And so you want to be kind of contrarian as you're talking through, at least in your head, at the time you're talking with the client. In your head, I'd say, okay, well, what if that wasn't a good idea? What else would I do? And be contrarian in your head to come up with these ideas. And you want to do that when you're talking with the client, because it might be that when you think of those ideas, it might lead to some other questions that you want to get in that upstream discovery phase versus waiting for it to go downstream. You also want to map out the possible issues. So before you finalize on your solution in your head, try to determine what issues might arise. Now, that sounds like a natural thing, but I see this in myself and others where we just get too married to our first idea and we start talking ourselves into it, convincing ourselves that this is the right idea. And so you need to take a phase before you call it done to say, okay, well, what other issues might come up if I do this? Think about performance. Speed, think about scale. How much can your server process on this? Think about it from all the other angles before you finalize that solution. Again, sometimes we can get so married to our first idea that we don't realize that it actually has a lot of issues. The other thing I'd say is put your first idea aside, create plan B and C before settling on plan A. And I do this all the time. Even if I like my plan A, even if I think plan A is right, I'll say, okay, well, let's pretend I can't do that. How else might I achieve this goal? And it's surprising how many times, plan B actually comes out to be better. Or plan B might, even in a small way, change how plan A was going to be implemented. So again, don't try to go down that one path and think that's going to be just the perfect path. Think through, play a game, say put plan A completely aside, say workflows didn't exist. How else might I do this? And you'd be surprised at how much that tool will actually help either create a better plan A or change plan A in a better way. So with Rock, there are so many tools at your disposal. It's really important that we understand the customer or client's needs so that we can provide them the best solution, not just a solution, because there's lots of ways to do everything in Rock, but we want to make sure that we give them the absolute best options. And I hope that these tools help inform you and give you a process to actually achieve that better through better discovery upstream to save us time and effort on the downstream.